Welcome to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We're off and running on a Sunday morning. I'm your host, Tim Murray, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. To quote Russell Crowe from Gladiator, are you not entertained? Did we really see what we think we saw last night in San Antonio as the Houston Cougars come back and beat the Duke Blue Devils as a 5-point underdog, and at one point in time, 80-1 on some live lines out there to beat the Duke Blue Devils. We've got a national championship for Monday night. It will be Florida. It will be Houston. And boy, oh boy, what a wild night we saw down in San Antonio. We're going to recap it for you. Got some great guests lined up. Seth Greenberg will join us coming up in less than 15 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on it. We'll go behind the counter later on this hour with Thomas Gable from the Borgata there in Atlantic City. I got to imagine that our friend Thomas Gable from the Borgata in AC was dancing like Kelvin Sampson as finally we saw an underdog bark late last night in San Antonio. The streak was 15 straight favorites winning straight up in the NCAA tournament. And I don't know about you, and you could check my timeline. I thought it would be 16 straight, and there were moments in time, as our fearless leader Matt Humans likes to say, there's nothing worse than hope. And as someone who had a Houston ticket last night at +5, I thought there was little to no hope for the Houston Cougars to let alone cover. Come back and win the game outright. And we're not trying to overlook what we saw from Florida, who, by the way, was down 8 and for a fourth straight game did not cover the first half spread. And they said, doesn't matter. We'll come back. We'll win that game. No problem. Walter Payton Jr. has joined some pretty rarefied air, which we will tell you about here as the show goes on. But all of our eyes are going to gravitate towards the nightcap and a game that early on, I don't know about you, but it felt like, my goodness, Houston, when are you going to make some of these early bunnies? For me, I was remarkably frustrated at the inability to finish early on, getting offensive rebounds, not getting it done there. But the Houston Cougars, they're like a villain in any scary movie that you could think of. You got to kill them like 10 times. And the Duke Blue Devils maybe killed them 8, maybe killed them 9, but ultimately it wasn't that 10th time as the Houston Cougars outscored Duke 11-1 down the stretch. And so many unique pieces to this game that it's just hard to kind of encapsulate here. And there were moments that I thought, all right, this thing is done. And Steve Buckhantz is a legendary broadcaster in the D.C. area, and his famous call is dagger. And I feel like if Buck were on the call last night on CBS, he might have called dagger when Cooper Flagg hits a corner 3 with 3 seconds to go to make it 64-55. At that point, I thought it was done. Adios. See you later, Houston. Thanks for coming out. Maybe we can get a backdoor cover. But like any villain, they kept clawing, they kept scratching. And then really, I thought the dagger happened when JoJo Tugler was called for the technical for reaching over the line and knocking the ball out of the inbounder's hands. With 1:13 to go, said, all right, Con Knipple goes down. He makes the free throw. You keep possession. And then Houston doesn't foul. They play it out. But Kelvin Sampson, a guy that's been around the block a time or two, he knew his team better than anybody. They get the stop. They come down. They hit the 3 from Emmanuel Sharp. They get the turnover. They get the offensive rebound, dunk back, and here we go. We're off and running. So many fascinating wrinkles from last night, and the Houston Cougars, who closed, saw a little bit of late money as a 4.5-point dog. They come back and win this game. 70-67, the final score. How about this from last night? With 8 minutes to go, the Duke Blue Devils led by 14 points. With 2 minutes and 6 seconds to go, they led by 9 points. With 34 seconds left in the game, Duke led the game by 6. They led by 3 with 25 seconds to go. They led by 1 with 19 seconds to go. And ultimately, it was the Houston Cougars who won this game 70-67. After that 3, the moment that I mentioned, Steve Buckhantz would probably call the dagger from the corner. 97.1. Not the radio station that you're listening to this show on. No, that was the win probability for the Duke Blue Devils after the Cooper Flag corner 3. But the Houston Cougars wouldn't go away, man. They would not go away. And how about this? The best offense in the country per Ken Palm's offensive efficiency rating. And I believe, and I'll double check the numbers as the show goes on, this might go down per Ken Palm's metrics as the most efficient offense in the history of his database, which dates back to 1997. An offense led by Cooper Flag and Con Knipple, two guys that are going to be lottery picks. Cooper Flag going to be the number 1 overall pick. They were held to 1 field goal over the final 10 and a half minutes last night in San Antonio. Just a remarkable comeback. And to insert the gif from Dumb and Dumber, as everybody's been asking and wondering, when's this NCAA tournament going to live up to the hype? I built it up all day yesterday. Game 1 was damn good. Game 2, an all-time classic. So you have totally redeemed yourself, NCAA tournament. And now we've got a national championship on Monday night where Florida finds themselves as a 1-point favorite over the Houston Cougars. Juwan Roberts, man, you talk about clutch free throws, a guy that doesn't shoot it all that well, but a man, and he's a man, who has been part of this program for 6 years, stepped to the line, hit 2 clutch free throws after, albeit a very questionable over-the-back call on Cooper Flag. Let's be real. But he goes down, he's clutch, he hits both free throws, he gives them a 1-point lead. They get the stop on Cooper Flag on the fadeaway. They take 2 more free throws, and that's all she wrote. The Houston Cougars come back, the improbable comeback from 14 down with 8 minutes to go, the 5th largest deficit overcome in a Final Four game in history. Juwan Roberts following the improbable Houston Cougars comeback yesterday.
You know, I feel like basketball is a game of runs, and, you know, they went on their run. So I feel like once we started pressuring them defensively, turn them over, I think that triggers us offensively. So looking at the time and looking at the clock, you know, I feel like we just believed in ourselves, and we had a feeling that we can still win the game. So Coach always tells us, just keep playing, fight, and never quit. You know, if you lose the game, once you don't quit, then you didn't really lose. So just going into games like this, you know, we never want to go down, but it happens. But once you don't quit and you believe, you know, anything can happen.
Tell you what about this Houston team. We talked about it a lot on this show. I've been a Houston believer. JVT, who usually joins me on VSiN Primetime, a Houston believer. Did I think they would win this game? No. Did my bracket have them winning this game? No. Did I have them plus the points? Did I feel ultra confident when they were down by 14 with 8 minutes to go? Hell no, I did not. But that's the beauty of this sport, man. That's the beauty of this crazy tournament. And that's the beauty of a team that is so veteran-laden like Houston. Well, with the victory comes the spoil. Jon Scheyer and this Duke team that looked at times this year unbeatable, how phenomenal they looked in the Elite Eight against Alabama. And at times last night, it looked like they were going to run away and hide, leading by 14, as mentioned, with 8 minutes to go. Jon Scheyer is going to be thinking about this one for a long, long time, because Cooper Flag ain't walking through that door again. There's going to be a lot of other great recruits, no doubt. Got the Boozer brothers coming in next year. But Cooper Flag, maybe once in a generation type of player that Duke will have on that roster. And unfortunately, they were not able to cut down the nets in San Antonio with their 6th national championship. Jon Scheyer following the 70-67 loss last night in San Antonio.
I mean, it's been a special ride that ended in a heartbreaking way. And frankly, the game, we did what we wanted to do. I thought our guys followed the game plan, controlled the game. We had the lead for 35 minutes. We're winning by 6 with 1:15 to go. And they made plays, and you got to give them a ton of credit. We didn't make those plays, and you go from some of the most special moments in the tournament to the most heartbreaking loss.
Just remarkable, man. And I saw it in the Bill A.D. VSiN newsletter as he was watching the game last night with our guy, Matt Humans. And Humans said, "I'm not speechless often, but that was something that took the breath away from all of us." And look, we'll get to what Florida did and their comeback. Worth noting, Florida, by the way, down 8 at the half, quickly evaporated that lead. Walter Clayton Jr., this dude is an absolute superstar, joining rarefied air in that he has had a 30-point performance in the Elite Eight and the Final Four. A gentleman by the name of Larry Bird, the last person to accomplish a feat like that. Florida and Houston. Yep, that's right. If you're waking up groggy-eyed, wait, what happened? Houston came back? Yes, they did. They came back. They held Duke to 1 field goal in the final 10 minutes. The Houston Cougars not only cover the 5, they get the outright win and snap a streak of 15 straight wins for favorites in the NCAA tournament. Seth Greenberg from ESPN, he's going to help us rehash last night. He'll join us next right here on the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Sunday morning. Yeah, that happened last night. Still hard to get over the performances that we saw. It was a heavyweight fight early on in the night. Florida and Auburn exchanging blows, and Florida ultimately pulling away, winning 79-73. And that was just setting the stage for a remarkable and an unforgettable evening with Houston coming from 14 down to beat the Duke Blue Devils 70-67 to set up a national championship between the Florida Gators and the Houston Cougars on Monday night. To help us make sense of some of it, maybe not all of it, Seth Greenberg from ESPN, who you'll see all over the network today, and of course tomorrow, College Game Day prior to tip-off, so make sure to check them out there on ESPN. Coach, I'll start with this, and I'm sure you got asked this last night, and I think your colleague Jay Williams even discussed it. Was this Houston's comeback or Duke's collapse last night in San Antonio?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it takes 2 to tango. You can't come back unless, obviously, the other team helps you, especially that type of deficit. So Houston made plays. Houston made plays. Sharp made that big 3 on the right-hand side. Houston created turnovers off the press. Houston got to the offensive glass and extended a couple of possessions, but Duke helped them. There's no doubt about it. Game pressure was real. Game pressure and how they responded to it wasn't a huge surprise because they haven't had a lot of game pressure during the course of the season. So I think it's both. I think it's both. I think we want to all put it on Duke's collapse, but that's not real. What's real is that Houston had a lot to do with it, even though it was so dramatic in terms of the last 11 minutes.
Coach, I've been a big believer in this Houston team, and I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, I told you Houston would win. I didn't say Houston would win. I thought Duke would win the game. I thought this would be a competitive game, and for 30-some-odd minutes, I was wrong. Duke was the right side for most of the night, but Houston just didn't go away. As a former coach and a man who's been on that sideline and has had those huddles when your team is down, Kelvin Sampson talked about it a little bit last night. How did Kelvin Sampson keep this team in the fight? And I know that's cliche, but this team's down 14 with 8 minutes to go, facing arguably the best offensive team we've seen in decades, and they were able to stay in it. How did Kelvin Sampson keep this team believing that they could come back and win this game last night?
Well, they've been in that situation before. If you look at during the course of the season, they had a bunch of remarkable comebacks. But it's really a one possession at a time. Like I think I saw Kelvin's quote is the only way you lose is if you quit. Well, there's no quit in that Houston team. The other thing we're not putting enough emphasis on is that Houston team, excluding Uzan and LJ Cryer, Uzan a 1-year transfer and Cryer a 2-year transfer, that team is invested in each other. That team is invested in winning. Those guys are all homegrown. I don't mean they're all Houston kids, but they're all guys that started as freshmen. And then you got Juwan Roberts, obviously, who's been there 6 years. So, I mean, those guys understood this is who Houston is. We are going to fight. We're going to draw a line in the sand every single play we can. And if that's good enough to get us back in the game, so be it. Now, Duke helped them a little bit, but a lot had to do with what Houston did. I mean, like the idea of creating the turnovers, the idea of knocking out loose balls, the idea of getting into the press, and, basically Cooper Flagg not running the ball into his hands. The last possession defensively, loading up to the ball. Now, I thought the foul on the free throw line, I thought it was an awful call.
Yep.
And I don't want to take anything away from what Houston did. But I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the game pressure, Duke has not played with the game pressure. And on the other hand, Houston has, and Houston is a team of grown blanket men.
Juwan Roberts is that. I mean, I think he might be getting Social Security at some point. He's been with that Houston roster for so long, and he steps up, man. What clutch free throws from Roberts late in that one after, I agree, I thought it was a bad call, but he makes them pay. He makes the free throws. As we're talking to Seth Greenberg of ESPN, of course, check him out all day long on ESPN, as well as tomorrow, College Game Day prior to tip. So, you don't see the emotion from Kelvin Sampson all that often, but he was there. He was talking to Tracy Wolfson after the game saying everyone was talking about Duke. Everyone was talking about John Shire, and here we are. We get this win. You saw videos of him kind of dancing, as they should be. But now, Coach, it was an amazing win. It's an all-time comeback. Well, you got to turn around in 48 hours, and you got to play a national championship. So I heard people compare it to 2015 when Wisconsin knocked off undefeated Kentucky and then ultimately lost to Duke in the national championship. How does Kelvin Sampson and this squad turn around, enjoy this improbable victory, but then keep their eyes on Florida for Monday night?
That's just who they are. They're not going to reinvent themselves. I mean, that's kind of what, when you play in the Big 12, you've got to do that every single week. You play a game on, say, Thursday, you got to turn around a game on Saturday, you got to be ready to play. Can you impose your identity on the game? I mean, that's just the essence of what Kelvin has built there. Obviously, the stakes are a little bit higher, but I expect this to be a high-level game because, I mean, the end of that game, basically, we're not even talking about Walter Clayton going on Kevin Walker. I mean, which is an amazing. We talk about the beginning of that Auburn and Florida game. The shots that were being made was just ridiculous. But this is a situation. Florida's had those same moments in the tournament. How did Florida beat Texas Tech? They were dead to rights. How did Florida beat UConn? They were dead to rights. Well, Walter Clayton happened. So, look, when you get to this stage of the tournament, now, when I was at 84 hours with the University of Virginia, we went to the Final Four. You're going to have games where you've got to do something special. You're going to have games where, you know what, you're going to face adversity. You're going to find a way, and sometimes you just got to figure it out. So both of these teams have faced adversity. Both of these teams have found a way to win games that, quite honestly, the odds makers, you guys probably know better. I know what was the chance of Florida beating Texas Tech a couple of weeks ago when they were down 10 with like 2 minutes to go. What was the odds of, this Houston team coming back down 11 points with, 4 minutes to go, or whatever it was? It's hard, man. I mean, but you go out and make plays. So this is all about, how does Florida handle the blitzes and the traps in the paint? How does Houston keep Florida off the glass? And this is going to be a battle of backcourts. If you look at it, I think almost 70% of the points that Houston scores is in the backcourt. It's the same thing with Florida, dynamic backcourt. So we're in for a treat. I don't know if it's going to be the scoring that you would really like in a championship game, but we're in for a treat.
There's no doubt about it. Seth Greenberg joining us here, courtesy of our progressive guest line. It's funny because this is what we do. It's early on a Sunday morning. The last thing we saw was the magical comeback from Houston or the collapse from Duke, however you want to look at it. But prior to that, as you alluded to, Coach, Walter Clayton Jr. did something we haven't seen since 1979 from a gentleman by the name of Larry Bird. I'm not sure exactly what he did in the NBA. I think he had a decent career. But Walter Clayton Jr., first player with a 30-point Elite Eight game and a 30-point Final Four game in the same NCAA tournament. So before I let you run, what do you expect from that matchup? Because Clayton right now, you mentioned Kemba. It feels like it's a Kemba Walker, Shabazz Napier type of run that Walter Clayton is having right now for Florida.
Yeah, look, I look for Houston. You cannot let him beat you. I mean, plain and simple. Anyway, look, they've got other weapons. Like Elijah Martin's dunk was like a 6-point play. It's the energy that it created. Lillard just takes big shots. Denzel Aberdeen is not afraid of anything. Having said that, you cannot let Walter Clayton beat you. He can't have another 30-point game. You've got to get the ball out of his hands. You've got to deny him the ball. You've got to trap him when he goes off those zoom actions and dribble handoffs. You've got to play above him and force him to back cut. You've got to do whatever you have to do, saying like, Walter Clayton is not beating us. Because as a coach, if the other team's best player who's playing like a lottery pick, if he beats you, that is a serious sleepless night.
Can't wait for it. You'll be there in San Antonio, Coach, breaking it down on ESPN. Appreciate the insight. Have a great day.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
There he is, Seth Greenberg from ESPN. One of the many great guests we're going to have in store for you today as we continue to recap what we saw last night and, of course, look ahead to the national championship. Oh, by the way, it's not the only thing going on in the sports world. We will set the scene for you coming up at the bottom of the hour. But just a reminder, folks, if you are betting on baseball, make sure you're getting the best odds with ProfitX. ProfitX is the first peer-to-peer sports exchange in the U.S. available in 40-plus states. That means you're betting against other fans, not the sports books, giving you, on average, 10 to 20% better odds. You can even request your own odds. Download ProfitX today and make sure you use the promo code VSiN. Houston and Florida, the national championship, Monday night down in San Antonio. Total right now 142. Florida a 1-point favorite. Much more on that as the show goes on, but we also have to set the scene for you. Will we see history on Long Island? We'll discuss that next. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a lovely Sunday morning. Well, I guess it depends on what side you had last night, or if you're just a college hoop fan and you enjoyed a Duke loss, even though the 4 letters on the front of the jersey tend to help out the enjoyment of a loss. But I would say comparing, if you power rated hateable Duke teams, I don't think this one was all that hateable, but we did get a tweet, and you could always tweet me. I'm at one Tim Murray. We're at VSiN Live on social media. Figlish on Twitter said, I had under 136.5, but that comeback was sweet. Yeah, that is a rough beat. The total did close 137.5, but for most of the week hovered in that 136 range. And of course, 70 to 67 final. Despite Duke not scoring a field goal in the final 10.5 minutes, you still had the game go over some numbers, but not the closing number. Thomas Gable will give us the latest from behind the counter here in less than 15 minutes. A busy day ahead on the sports calendar, which of course we will get into. Thanks to Seth Greenberg for just jumping on the program and discussing his thoughts on the game. We'll talk to Wes Reynolds in hour number 2. But before we set the scene for today, I do want to give a little love to the Florida Gators, who for a 4th straight game did not cover the first half spread. Second round, laying 6 in the first half against UConn, tied 31 apiece. Sweet 16, they were laying 3.5 against Maryland the first half, led 40-38. Elite 8 laying 4 in the first half against Texas Tech, led 40-37. And then yesterday, they were laying 1.5. They trailed by 8, and then they, quickly evaporated that deficit in the second half and went on to a 79-73 win. So before we set the scene, let's give some love, rightfully so, to the victors in the early game last night, the Florida Gators. Their head coach is Todd Golden.
I'm just so proud of my team. My players and my staff have just done an incredible job all year with their preparation and their approach on a daily basis. And obviously a great accomplishment for our program to make it here to the Final Four. But the heart and just toughness, both physically and mentally, that these guys showed today was incredible. Credit Auburn, obviously an incredible team, one of the best college basketball teams in the past couple of decades. And you all know how much I love Bruce and Steven in their program. And with that being said, I'm incredibly proud of these guys for getting this win. And we're alive, man. We're playing for this national championship on Monday night.
Yes, they are. Point spread right now sitting at 1 in favor of the Florida Gators. Much more on that game as the show goes on. We'll talk to Scott Van Pelt in hour number 3, Rob Doster as well in the final hour of the program. But let's get to it. I know last night was incredible, but we got another day of sports ahead of us. Let's set the scene.
Let's dive into the biggest games of the day.
Take a step back and say, wow, we got to do it again. Yeah, we've got a national championship today, which we will discuss, of course, on the women's side as UConn takes on South Carolina. But coming up at 12:30 Eastern time on the island, will we see history? Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals take on the New York Islanders. Ovechkin on Friday night in the nation's capital. Not 1, but 2 goals to tie the great one with 894 career goals. Next goal breaks the record. And if you're looking at how to bet this, and our guy Jonathan Davis, shout out, he's done a phenomenal job attacking some props on Alex Ovechkin, and he's been hitting hard on the empty net goals because it has helped Alex Ovechkin get to the point we are at right now with 894 goals. But if you're thinking maybe he breaks the record with an empty netter, not so fast, my friend. This was Alex Ovechkin because he had a chance on Friday night to do so with an empty net. He said, no. Alex Ovechkin, will he score an empty netter today?
Alex, you said you didn't want to break it on an opening net. You look like you told your coach, Spencer Carberry, no. Can you just tell us about your decision there?
Yeah. I have a pretty good chances in the last minute. If Stromer gave me a nice pass, like a flat one, like I'll probably in. But I think I tell Carps right away, like I don't want to do it. I tell Stromer asked me, Carly asked me, everybody asked me, like, you want it? I said, let's wait.
Let's wait. So don't bet an empty net goal prop. If you are going to bet some Alex Ovechkin props, on Friday night, anytime goal for Ovechkin was minus 130. Just an astronomical price to pay. Today, it's minus 120 at DraftKings. They're on the road at the Islanders. Caps are a slight favorite. Puck drop a little after 12:30 Eastern time. If you think he does get it done today, there is a way to look at it, and maybe he gets it done on Thursday back in the nation's capital against the Carolina Hurricanes, plus 270. But that game will be on here as the show goes on, so curious to see how it all plays out. Capitals and Islanders. Will we see history be broken on the island there as the Capitals take on New York? A national champion will be crowned later on this afternoon as South Carolina takes on UConn. Dawn Staley and her Gamecocks looking for another national title. UConn, though, getting a lot of buzz, a lot of hype. They have looked the part. They are a favorite today as well. Won on Friday night, 85-51. Did the Huskies to get back to the national championship. Gino Auriemma, 11-1 all-time in national championship games. But Dawn Staley says, hey, we're the defending champs. Last year, all the hype was about Caitlin Clark. We won that game. It's time to give us some love, Coach Staley.
It happened to us last year. You know, everything was about Caitlin Clark and her legacy and her ability to win a national championship. Yet we were coming to this thing undefeated, doing something that's unprecedented at the time. Because it's hard. I mean, it's hard. And then we find ourselves back here in a similar situation. So, you know, I want the sentiments to be about our players and what our players been able to do equally, because there's room to do both. Okay, we can raise Paige up because she deserves that. We can raise our players up because they deserve that.
South Carolina has won 2 of the last 3 national championships. Last year, an 87-75 win over Caitlin Clark and Iowa to wrap up a undefeated season. They also beat the UConn Huskies in 2022, 64-49. South Carolina has won 3 national championships since UConn won their last title, which came in 2016. Earlier this year, it was a victory for the UConn Huskies over the South Carolina Gamecocks. UConn has been rolling. They are a massive favorite, as we showed you on the screen, laying 6.5 against the Gamecocks later on today as this game takes place in Tampa, Florida. Paige Beckers, she's the superstar on the UConn Huskies, and she's hoping to wrap up her career with a national championship.
Well, I think before you even get here, you kind of know the pressures that exist by committing to UConn. So by making that decision to want to come here and try to live up to that and be a part of a legendary program, it's a decision you have to make before you even step on a campus. And then once you walk inside the practice facility, you see all the history, all the names, all the banners. It's just motivation. And obviously there's expectations here, and anything less than a national championship is really a disappointment. And as players, that's what you play for and what you want to live up to, and the expectations and the pressure. It's a privilege.
Pressure's on UConn. Once again, haven't won a national title since 2016. And the last time they faced South Carolina in the national title in 2022, they lost by 15. Worth noting, earlier this year down in Columbia, South Carolina, as mentioned on February 16th, it was a rout by the UConn Huskies over the Gamecocks, winning that game 87-58. And this team, this UConn team, since losing to Tennessee on the road in early February, has absolutely been rolling. So we will see if, in fact, the UConn Huskies are able to cut down the nets yet again, or will it be South Carolina doing it for a second consecutive years? Point spread sits at 6.5. Busy day on the hardwood, and the most notable game is the Lakers against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Lakers are an 8.5-point underdog against the top team in the Western Conference, but a loaded day, and one where we've got a lot to keep an eye on. The Golden State Warriors, 5.5-point favorites against the Houston Rockets later on tonight, and that Western Conference 3 through 8 is completely jumbled in there, and one loss changes a lot of things. Lakers currently 47-30, but the Warriors 46-31. If the point spread is accurate, it'll be the Lakers to 47-31, and the Warriors later today at 47-31. So a big day on the hardwood for the NBA. Hey, folks, are you ready to take your sports betting to the next level? The Sharp Plays at sharpplays.com is your secret weapon. Since 2011, they've been building trusted relationships with major sports books and sports insiders worldwide. Best part about Sharp Plays? Free content anytime. Get real-time betting action reports, alerts, and more through email and X directly from the pros. So make sure you check them out at sharpplays.com. With Sharp Plays, you're joining a team that's never had a losing year. How did the books fare with the Houston comeback last night? Thomas Gable from the Borgata will help us go behind the counter next.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Sunday morning. Just a reminder of the VSiN Weekend Morning Line every Saturday and Sunday, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. I'm your host, Tim Murray. You can always tweet me. I'm at @1TimMurray. We'll talk to Wes Reynolds in hour number 2. We'll also chat with Patrick Everson. Scott Van Pelt, noon Eastern here on the program. Get a little college basketball and Masters, which gets underway, of course, next week. But as we like to do each and every Saturday and Sunday, get the latest from behind the counter. Who are the odds makers needing? How did the evening unfold for said odds makers? So let's do that right now. Let's go behind the counter.
Where are the lines changing? And where's the money going? Let's go behind the counter.
Yes, indeed. Let's head out to Atlantic City to bring in Thomas Gable, friend of the network. He is over at the Borgata in AC. And I joked earlier in the show, Thomas, that we saw Kelvin Sampson dancing a little bit post-game, and I envision that being you and your fellow odds makers as finally a dog barked, ending the reign of terror of 15 straight favorites winning outright. How was the result for you guys with Houston pulling off the improbable comeback last night over Duke?
Well, it was very nice, and as you said, it kind of ended that huge favorite money line parlay that everybody seems to bet every round now this tournament. And I'll say this: I know a lot of operators have been kind of heard complaints, how results are down because of that, and it's affected the results negatively. Listen, if you're on this side of the counter and you're in this business, and you're complaining about that, you're probably in the wrong business. That's just part of the game, and that's something you should be welcoming when favorites go on that type of run, because one, it puts money back in the gamblers' pockets, and what ends up happening is exactly what you saw last night. And Duke was certainly in every single parlay imaginable yesterday, and I'm probably with the Florida result in the first game, it was kind of like, oh, here we go again with the favorites and winning outright, but obviously an improbable come from behind victory there by Houston, but that's really what you would come to expect from this team if you followed them not only this year but over the last few years. I mean, they are one of the toughest and most just resilient teams that are out there in college basketball. That's why I've been drawn to this program for the last few years, just with how they play defense. It's very much a throwback to teams that you used to see in college basketball, and how they play defense and how they don't quit. And last night was a perfect example of it.
They just don't go away. And, we talked about the numbers: down 14 with 8 minutes to go, 9 with 2 minutes to go, 6 with 34 seconds to go. And they pulled off the comeback. I know there were some shops out there. I heard the Field of 68 fellas talking about it that were as high as 80-1 on in-game prices. Like, Thomas, we like to throw those numbers around, but look, never in my wildest dreams was I pulling out my app last night and saying, oh, yeah, I really think Houston's going to make this comeback here. So was there much in-game love on the Houston Cougars, or were most people anticipating this to be just a Duke coronation there as the evening went on?
Yeah, the in-play numbers were, again, it was pretty much on Duke and laying points in play with Duke. And I mean, I think if you go back to even the first half of that game, Houston they were missing some pretty easy shots, open shots in the lane, and that game could have been a lot closer at halftime than it really was. Houston just was not converting on the offensive end. And I mean, obviously, so Duke covered that first half number, but really when they needed to convert, and especially lock down defensively, they did. And Duke, I think this is one of the dangers of, certainly talent-wise, Duke is head and shoulders above probably everybody else. But again, when you're relying on freshmen, and I'm not going to say, hey, it was just strictly because of freshmen, but when you have freshmen, we've seen it in so many times past in this tournament at the biggest time, guys who don't have that experience when the lights are the brightest and that pressure gets ratcheted up. And believe me, Houston really did apply the pressure there at the end. Mistakes are made, and that's what happened. Duke, missing foul shots, turning the ball over. Now you can say certainly flags, foul there over the back of Roberts probably shouldn't have been called there. But Duke made plenty of mistakes on their own outside of that call from the officials there that they folded up at the time when that's where everybody should be stepping up. And again, I think that comes down to the maturity of the Houston team and just the experience of these guys who, these are men. Let's face it, these are grown men out there.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's the second mention of the grown bleep men that they are there on the Houston roster. We're talking to Thomas Gable, courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line, race and sportsbook director at the Borgata, as we go behind the counter here on the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. You know, it's funny because this is just what we do in sports, and that was the last thing that we saw. It was such an epic comeback, and we just gloss over the fact that Florida, got to give them credit. You know, down 8 at the break. That first half was as entertaining as really any half that I saw all throughout the NCAA tournament. And, you know, we've got a superstar really kind of brewing there on the Florida side of things. So when you look at this Florida team, how was the action in that game? And conversely, as Walter Clayton does his nuclear thing like he does almost every single game, it feels like, was the in-play action pretty heavy on Florida as they trailed by 8 at the break?
The in-play action was good, two-way in that game. As you mentioned, Florida not covering the first half there, and actually the first half stayed under as well. I mean, went over. The full game stayed under in that game. But, Florida with Walter Clayton, you hit the nail on the head. This kid is something special. I mean, he is beyond talented, and he also seems to play with ice water in his veins, and that's really what I like to see. This Florida team, they also seem to go on these runs where it's like almost every single game they're going to go on an 8-0, 9-0, 10-0 run at some point. They never seem to be out of a game either. We talked about Houston coming back. I don't think Florida ever is really out of a game either if they get down big. Overall, that wasn't a great result in that first game for us. We took some late Florida money. But I will say, handle-wise, it felt like last night was set up almost like a title fight night where Florida and Auburn was the undercard, because it was almost triple the handle on the Duke-Houston game as there was on the Florida-Auburn game. And it wasn't like it was light handle on the Florida-Auburn game. It was just that heavy of action on the Duke-Houston game. And it seemed to be set up that way, like that was the main event with Florida and Auburn being the undercard. But I mean, listen, Florida, it has that was the 4 teams that really were the top tier of college basketball this season. 3 of them have been there pretty much all year, I would say. Florida playing themselves into that top tier within the last month or two. You could certainly say they belonged in that top tier. So from our side of the counter, it was good to have the best of the best there. It certainly helps with the action that it attracts. And I think this final is going to be tremendous as well tomorrow night. It should be a high-handle game, and you have 2 of the best in the country going at it.
Hey, before we let you run, Thomas Gable joining us, giving us the latest from behind the counter. Where did you guys open, and what do you expect, Thomas, in the final minute for the national championship tomorrow?
Yeah, so we opened pick. Took some early Florida money. It's up to 1, and pretty much you're seeing that across the market. Florida laying 1. But this is, I think, going to be a pretty evenly bet game. This is a coin flip game in my mind. I think it's going to attract a good two-way action. So I don't necessarily think there's going to be a big decision out there unless you see some really big bets come in on one side. But I don't know if you're going to necessarily get that with this matchup. I think this is just made for a good balanced action on both sides game. Really just I have these 2 teams power rated almost identical at this point. So for me, it's a true pick 'em.
He's Thomas Gable. Always great to give us the latest from behind the counter. Thomas, appreciate it as always. Enjoy the game tomorrow night.
All right. Thank you. Good luck.
There he is, Thomas Gable from the Borgata, giving us the latest from behind the counter. Good result for the house, and we'll get more from behind the counter, more insights with Patrick Everson in the next hour. Hey, folks, the VSiN Summer Special is here, and it's the best deal of the season. For just $59, get full VSiN Pro access to everything we do from now through August 1st. That's 50% off the regular monthly price. From Augusta to the NFL Draft, MLB action, NBA and NHL playoffs. Make sure you check it out, vsin.com/subscribe. $59 all the way through August 1st.